Okay, so you guys wanted us to really dive into female intimacy within a loving relationship, and we heard you.
You want a deep dive? You got it. We actually have two sources here that are perfect for this.
Yeah, these sources really unpack a lot, like all the psychological and emotional factors driving desire for women.
And especially the importance of a strong emotional connection. Plus, they give us some really solid steps to actually build a more passionate bond.
Exactly. And we really want to kind of cut to the chase here, pull out those most important nuggets for you all.
Right, make this knowledge super accessible. And it's interesting, both these sources start by posing a question that, well, a lot of us probably have.
Yeah, like why does that spark fade sometimes, even when both people are, putting in the effort?
Right. And they suggest the answer goes way beyond just physical attraction.
So that's where we're headed today, exploring that difference, physical attraction versus a deep emotional connection.
And we'll be pulling apart some of those subtle intimacy killers that can really chip away at that desire.
We'll also get into the power of feeling emotionally safe and communication, really open and honest communication.
Totally. And then we'll lay out some practical steps, things you can actually do backed by, research and stuff for the thriving, passionate relationship.
Okay, so one of the sources, I love this, uses this analogy of a garden. Like physical attraction is that seed, right? It's the potential.
I like that.
But the emotional connection, that's the soil, the water, the sunlight that allows that seed to actually flourish.
Wow, that's so true. You can't just have the seed, you got to nurture it.
Totally. So by the end of this, you should have a better grasp of what one source calls the hidden language of desire and some really actionable advice to make your relationships stronger.
Let's jump in.
All right, so both sources really stress this. For women, intimacy is much more of an emotional experience. It goes way deeper than just the physical part.
Absolutely. And they highlight how important it is for a woman to feel safe, valued, and really understood.
Like, those are the must-haves for her to even want to open up emotionally and then physically.
It's all connected. And it's interesting, they say if those emotional needs aren't met, all the physical effort in the world might not make a difference,
Yeah, in fact, it can backfire, right? Lead to feeling pressure or resentment.
which is totally the opposite of what you want.
They actually encourage listeners to really think about this. Like, think back to times when you felt super connected to your partner.
Yeah, those moments where it just felt really right, really close, what was going on.
Exactly. And on the flip side, think about times when you felt distant. What factors contributed to that?
Was it a lack of communication? Unresolved tension? Maybe you felt unseen or unappreciated?
Both sources really drive home the point that these emotional currents are powerful. They can fuel intimacy, but they can also completely shut it down.
Totally. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And to illustrate this, they both use a pretty similar scenario with this couple, Sarah and John.
Yeah, they start out super passionate, spontaneous, all that. But fast forward 5 years, work, life, stress kicks in, that spark starts to fade.
Sarah initiates intimacy less often, and John's feeling confused, even a little rejected.
And at first, he thinks, oh, she's tired, she's stressed. But both sources say the real issue is Sarah feels emotionally neglected.
John's super into his work, and even when he's home, he's distracted, on his phone, watching TV, whatever.
And Sarah feels like she constantly has to compete for his attention, his emotional presence.
Makes sense. She misses that deep connection they had in the beginning, those long talks where they really shared their feelings.
Exactly. And now she's starting to feel more like, I don't know, a roommate than a lover. This really shows how that decline in emotional intimacy can directly kill desire.
But the good news is, both sources say it doesn't have to be this way. Emotional intimacy can be rebuilt. That spark can be reignited.
And they actually give some really good, concrete advice on how to do that.
So what are some of those nuggets?
Well, one of the biggest things they both emphasize is the importance of being present. Like truly present.
Not just physically in the same room, but mentally and emotionally engaged.
Exactly. Putting away the distractions, the phones, really listening to your partner, making them feel seen and heard.
And that leads right into open communication.
Oh.
Both sources really stress the importance of creating a space where you both feel safe to talk about your feelings, your desires, even your fears.
Totally, without judgment. And it's not always these big dramatic things. They both highlight how important it is to show appreciation.
Little gestures, words of affirmation, just letting your partner know you see them and value them.
Right, and disagreements, they're going to happen. But it's about how you handle them. Both sources talk about resolving conflicts constructively.
Focusing on understanding each other, not just trying to win an argument.
And then keeping the romance alive. This can be anything from planning surprises to having regular date nights, just making an effort to bring back some of that excitement.
They make a really great point. When a woman feels emotionally fulfilled, desire often follows naturally.
It becomes an expression of that connection rather than feeling like a chore or an obligation.
So it's like, address the root of the issue, and the rest will follow.
Totally. Now let's talk about some of those sneaky intimacy killers, both sources point out. These are things that can slowly erode that emotional connection without you even realizing it.
One of the big ones is a lack of active listening. And I think we're all guilty of this sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Like when you're only half listening, interrupting, offering advice before you really understand.
Yeah, or just not really engaging with what your partner's saying. It makes them feel like their thoughts and feelings aren't important.
Another one is unresolved conflict. Holding on to grudges, avoiding tough conversations, constant criticism. It creates a toxic environment.
And then taking your partner for granted. That's a big one. When you stop showing appreciation, stop making an effort, it sends the message that they're not special anymore.
It's like you're saying they've become part of the furniture.
Yeah, and that can be so hurtful. Both sources also talk about the importance of vulnerability. If you're always guarded, never sharing your own feelings or fears, it creates a barrier.
And that can make it hard for your partner to truly connect with you.
Exactly. And lastly, they both talk about the impact of prioritizing other things over your partner. Of course, you need a balance in life, but when work or hobbies constantly come first, it can be damaging.
It makes your partner feel unimportant, like an afterthought. And remember Sarah and John, well, they illustrate this perfectly. John gets so focused on his career that he starts neglecting those little things that matter to Sarah.
Like their anniversary, her birthday, even just asking about her day.
And this makes Sarah feel invisible, resentful, and she starts to withdraw. John's totally oblivious to how unhappy she is.
It's sad because it's preventable. Both sources say John could have made some simple changes.
Like what?
Being more present when he was with Sarah, putting away work and distractions,
Expressing gratitude for all the things she does.
making time for those deeper conversations, doing things together,
Addressing conflicts head on instead of avoiding them.
and those little acts of love and affection. Surprises, remembering important dates, just showing her he cares.
It's all about showing up. Both sources are very clear that emotional neglect can kill intimacy, but it doesn't have to.
And if you're recognizing any of these patterns in your own relationship, it's important to take action now, not wait till things get worse.
Absolutely. So what can you do? Both sources give some really practical advice on how to reignite that spark and build a deeper connection.
One thing they both recommend is scheduling dedicated time together. It doesn't have to be fancy, just 30 minutes a day, phones away, just talking.
And really listening, practicing active listening, making eye contact, asking questions, showing you're engaged.
And something as simple as expressing appreciation daily can be super powerful. Tell your partner what you appreciate about them.
It could be anything, a personality trait, a kind gesture, anything. Just those little acknowledgments go a long way.
Both sources also encourage being vulnerable. Share your own feelings, fears, dreams with your partner. Let them see the real you.
And offer help without being asked. Pay attention to their needs and step up. It shows you care.
Little surprises can be great too. Doesn't have to be big or expensive, just something thoughtful.
And don't forget about non-sexual touch. Holding hands, hugs, just physical affection throughout the day can strengthen that bond.
It's all about building that intimacy on multiple levels.
And remember Sarah and John. When John started making those efforts, Sarah responded positively. Their intimacy started coming back.
It's proof that change is possible.
But they both emphasize that lasting intimacy isn't just about these quick fixes. It's about building a solid foundation.
That means communication, ongoing effort, and growing together.
One of the things they recommend is developing a shared vision for your relationship. Talk about your goals, your dreams for the future.
And understanding each other's love languages. This is huge. Knowing how your partner best expresses and receives love makes a big difference.
They talk about the 5 love languages: acts of service, gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. Figure out what works for you both.
Forgiveness is also key. Letting go of past hurts and resentments.
And both sources say there's no shame in seeking professional help if you need it. Couples therapy can be a game changer.
And be open to change. Relationships evolve, people grow. Adapting and growing together is crucial.
One of the sources tells this really powerful story about Maria and David, a couple married for 20 years who are on the verge of divorce.
But they went to couples therapy and actually found their way back to each other. It just shows that it's never too late.
Now let's get into what both sources call the two pillars of a truly intimate relationship: vulnerability and emotional safety.
This is the deep stuff. Vulnerability is about having the courage to let your partner see all of you, even the imperfections.
Sharing your deepest thoughts, feels, insecurities, everything. And that takes a lot of trust.
Emotional safety is what allows that vulnerability to happen. It's knowing your partner will respond with love and acceptance no matter what.
Your feelings won't be dismissed or used against you.
Both sources are really clear that without emotional safety, you can't have true intimacy.
It leads to shutting down, withdrawing, building walls.
So how do you cultivate these things? Both sources give some great advice. It starts with self-awareness, understanding your own emotional patterns, your triggers.
And then communicating openly and respectfully, using I statements, avoiding blame.
Active listening, of course, is crucial. Really paying attention to your partner, validating their feelings.
Create a space where judgment is off the table, where you both feel safe to open up without fear of criticism.
Support each other unconditionally. Offer reassurance, encouragement.
And when things go wrong, as they inevitably will, apologize sincerely and forgive each other.
Let go of those grudges.
And build a culture of appreciation. Express gratitude regularly. Make it a habit.
One of the sources shares a story about Emma and Daniel, a couple who drifted apart because Emma was emotionally closed off, and Daniel struggled with vulnerability.
They learned to communicate more openly, create a safer space, and it made all the difference.
One of the sources uses this great analogy. Vulnerability and emotional safety are like two sides of a canyon.
And both partners need to work together to build that bridge across.
And finally, both sources circle back to those long-term habits for a strong relationship.
Like regular check-ins to see how you're both doing, how you're feeling about the relationship.
Doing things together, having shared experiences.
Keep learning about each other. People change, so keep up.
Prioritize intimacy, both physical and emotional. Make time for it.
Practice gratitude every day. For each other, for everything you have.
Laugh together. Find the humor in life in your relationship.
Show respect and kindness, even in the little things.
Keep the romance alive. Don't let it fade into the background.
And support each other's growth. Encourage each other's dreams.
Both sources emphasize that these habits aren't about grand gestures. It's the small, consistent actions that add up over time.
And remember that garden analogy. It's a perfect reminder that relationships, like gardens, need constant care and attention to thrive.
You got to keep those weeds of resentment and distance from taking over.
So to recap, true intimacy in a loving relationship is about building that deep connection through vulnerability, emotional safety, and consistent effort.
It's not just about the physical, it's about the emotional bond.
Now, we want you to think about one thing you can do differently starting today to strengthen your relationship.
Maybe it's listening more actively, expressing more appreciation, making time to connect.
Remember, building a strong relationship takes work, like tending a garden, but the rewards are so worth it.
You get a deeper, more passionate, and lasting connection.
And finally, we'll leave you with this question. How do societal messages about masculinity in relationships maybe get in the way of that open communication and vulnerability we talked about?
And what can you do, maybe even in small ways, to challenge those norms in your own life and relationship? Think about it.